Hello, hello. I'm just sorting this out, making sure that we are live. How are you guys? I want to talk today about realism, and I don't know why it's showing GAI info sessions, but alas, that's what we've got in front of us. Hey, Kali, I see you there. And all right, and then we're also on Facebook. Just need to make sure that we are on Facebook. I'm over here with the crew, just making sure that we got this thing streaming. We're there. Okay. How's everybody doing today? I got something kind of fun I want to do with you. Hey, Gareth, how you doing? Hola. We want to talk 12 days of realism. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to close my, basically the computer system that does all of this stuff. And we have to keep it closed behind a nice big old curtain. Okay. How's it going? Hey, Ryan Kingsline here. Now, in case you don't know me, because I'm doing something special here, so I want to make sure that I get some people out with this, because this is actually 12 days. So I'm going to do something I normally don't do. I'm going to introduce myself. Most of you guys know me, but if you don't know who I am, my name's Ryan Kingsline. I am a sculptor, a poet, entrepreneur, and a painter. And most of you may know me from my work at Pixelogic, where I helped to develop ZBrush and built the clay, the rake brush, some of those things that are inside, and really worked on features with the development team, and just had a blast developing this, what's really the premier digital sculpting software out there. And I haven't really spent a ton of time in the last 2 years focused on that. On the digital sculpting side, because I've been over at Game Art Institute building up the boot camps and looking for this kind of next way to train artists, a way that really leads to jobs. But that's all shifting now, because I found the way and I've worked on it. We've done a lot of amazing stuff at GAI, and I'm just crazy excited about all my students there. This is going to kick something off. This is the 12 days of realism. Every day for the next 12 days, I want to go either live or I'm going to share a video with you. It's going to be one of those two. And I'm going to talk about realism. That's the central topic. Now, up until this point in my career, I've been talking about software. And then I've been talking about jobs. The big thing, the thing that's really behind it all for me... Facebook. Oh, no. Not 3 bad. What I'm really, oh, it's so dark. And look at my hair. Oh well. That's what you get for watching an artist program, right? It's a good thing I'm remotely clothed. So realism's been the central part. You guys may not know this, but I'm actually kind of classically trained, and I say kind of because it was before. Today you can go get classically trained in a lot of places, but back when I went to school, not nearly as young as I might look, there was very little. I went to a school in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia actually, called the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and we had casts that Napoleon sent us. It's the nation's oldest art school. And the only other realism track was either a master's program, or you went over to Wisconsin or into Chicago and you went to an atelier and you learned the really old school, real classical method, right? Or you found an instructor somewhere, and Florence was around back then, but kind of not a big deal, right? Now you got a lot of choices. But I'm classically trained, and realism has been the key component to my life from go. So I want to talk over these next 12 days of what makes something realistic. And what we really want to be talking about, is how do we get ourselves into something like this? I locked the camera. Let's switch our cameras. And let me give you this view. I love this view. Here we go. Yeah. So how do we start to get something that looks real, including, let's see if we can get some hair on this guy in this time period, that gets some specular, And I want to talk to you during this time about how you get really beautiful specular. Because that specularity, that's the key. That's the end all be all, the entire conversation. And there's little tricks that we do for the eyes as well. If I come over here, you'll see a couple of things that change. And these are all things that I want to start to unpack over the next 12 days as we get ready for the holidays. Let's just turn these guys off. You see the difference in those eyes, right? I'm over here looking. I got a screen to monitor and make sure you guys can see me and everything looks okay. This is all stuff I want to start to share. Let's unlock that. I want to share with you guys and help you understand how can you make the most out of this. You know, and in many ways, I'm right there with you in terms of learning the latest and all of that stuff. But the principles of realism, and the thing that we have to kind of understand about it, a big part of this conversation is really, you know, being able to see. That's the kind of key component. That's the thing. Hold on, let's flip this. There we go. That's the thing that's really important, is you got to be able to see something, right? If I show you this, and we're looking here, what can you see? You can, with your eyes, you can see this, but can you really see it? Can you reconstruct it, right? In order for us to approach the topic of realism, it's a lot of times people will say, go draw, right? And that's important, but drawing does something very specific. And it's not the only thing you have to do. If you understand what it does, there's other ways to achieve it. The thing that drawing does is it forces you to become an active participant in the process of seeing. You can't be passive while you are drawing. You must reconstruct it. And that's the key, right? So if we can take, you know, that by the mantle, this idea that seeing as an artist is not this passive activity, it's an active, constructive process, then we can start to make a difference in what we do, right? And so what I want to do here is start to unpack this, and I want to start with this first topic of, you know, in terms of the 12 days of realism. I'm really excited about this, and I tell you, to be honest, I'm kind of incredibly nervous as well, because usually I end up talking about software, things of that nature. And now I'm going to be sitting here, let me see, testing. Uh-oh. Did we hear a double? Hold on one second. Let me make sure we're not getting any doubled up. There we go. Okay. I don't think there was any double audio going, but let me take a look. Mood Master, you're going to be joining the boot camp in January. I love that. Thank you. We are just, in fact, let's exit out of here. So if you guys want to know more about it, we're just changing things up over here. And there's a new courses page. And in this courses page, this is where actually a lot of the stuff we have coming up is going to happen. If that page ever lists character art, environment art, AR, VR. We have a boot camp art test coming up. That's a 2-week deal, pretty inexpensive. Okay, there's Substance Designer, all that stuff. But let's get ourselves back to this topic of the 12 days of realism. And every day for the next 12 days, I'm going to give you a little something to tide you over with and help your work be better. All right, so you guys ready for the first lesson? The first thing that we really need to get in and understand? Because the road to realism has one really important thing we must start with. Adrian, yeah, the fan is on. That's why I have that thing in a box. You can probably hear the audio a little bit better now. Okay, let's start talking. What's the missing ingredient? What are you missing in your work? And this is a topic I've been talking a lot about, and so we're going to talk a little bit about today, the missing ingredient in your work, what you really need. Okay, and the first thing that I like to make sure people are aware of is that there's two big ways to think about sculpting, right? And this is a little bit of a trite way to talk about this, but it's an important note for us to understand. So bear with me. I'm going to use a bit of a used metaphor in this conversation, but there's the amateur and there's the pro way, okay? And really what we're saying here is there's the people who are just playing, and there are the people who have some serious goal that they simply must achieve. I got no problems if you're here to just play and all that stuff, but some of us, like myself, we must generate revenue from our art. We must produce results for somebody, like my students at the boot camp. They must make something happen, right? And they need reliable, predictable results. That's the pro way. That's really all that kind of means, okay? The way that an amateur sees is usually from the bumps inwards. So what that means, if you look at these two images back here, and we'll unpack this because I'm not trying to be judgmental, and I'll show you my example as well. I'll show you my amateur example. You may not even know that this is my amateur example, but it's a little bit more out in the open than even these sculptures. So this was the press, asses that they are, dictated the Scary Lucy. Okay, and then this was another sculpture here, which wasn't really intended to be a big centerpiece. The airport hired this guy who's his first time doing a sculpt, and he did pretty damn good for his first time doing a bust, in my opinion. Okay, but anyways, an amateur will look at this and they'll look from the bumps inward. So they'll see a bump, they'll see a bump, they'll see a bump. And then from here, they try to kind of figure something out, like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Here's a bump. And there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of coordination between the pieces. It leads to misalignments, it leads to shifts in proportion, it leads to weak volumes and really weak forms. That's the primary problem. The way a pro sees something is they understand, as I said earlier, that it is an active process. Okay? The person who sculpted the remakes of these had an entirely different way of doing this. They had an entire different approach. Something that I tell my students all the time, and this is a super, super important thing, is that mastery is not magic, mastery is process. If you do the same thing that somebody else did, you're gonna get the same result that somebody else got, okay? But you gotta do the same thing. That's the key, okay? So mastery is not magic, it's process. And if you look here, what you see and what you're seeing is better process. That's it, okay? Better process. These are the same sculpts. They're largely made to replace the other one to one extent or another. The way that a pro sees something is it's active. When they see something, they're mapping out its volume, its structure, and its form. They're active. They're not reactive, right? An amateur will see a bump and react to the bump. A pro will ignore the bump, and they'll be thinking deeper in terms of more specific elements all the way through, okay? But the key thing to understand is that it's never too late to switch the way that you approach things. These are the exact same sculptor, and it's 1 year apart. What I really love to point out about this is that the features, if you look at the features just independently, they're actually the same. The bridge of that nose is the exact same bridge of the nose. So it's almost like he got the anatomy, or the form or something pretty much exactly right, or at least right for him, but something else changed. So what changed between these two pieces? That's kind of the question that I really want to ask you. And I really want to be clear about this because I don't want to be judgmental. Because for me, the real problem, which is really strange because as an artist, you must judge yourself, you must judge other work, but I'm not trying to be an ass. The real problem in my book, and if you check out this YouTube thing, it's who are these, jackals that are on this committee that don't care about art and are hiring somebody who it's their first time. They don't care about pros for artists and people who do this for a living, and and that they don't even consider this a real job. Like, hey, let's just throw something up in front of an airport and hire, whoever comes along, I know several sculptors that would have gladly done that job. But in our world, you know, there's no right or wrong with art until it's time for them to make fun of us, right? Do yourself a favor, Google that, that video or that documentary. It's fantastic and very eye-opening and humbling to see what the individual went through and then how they overcame it and how they're approaching it now and used it as a moment of strength. Whereas in the other case, of this case of Scary Lucy, the individual actually stopped sculpting entirely, which I think is very disheartening. So the important thing to understand is that vision is a process of construction, much like artificial intelligence, computer vision. We must construct these things to be able to actually see them. Our eye is not a camera. What it is it's a sensor. And it's got multiple sensors, about 7+ sensors in there that tell us about color and saturation or hue and value. Then they also tell us about distance, and there's a sensor that tells us about whether or not something's moving fast in the distance or moving fast close to us. Seeing is a constructive process where our eyes are sensing different levels of information and our brain is absorbing that. So the question that you have in front of you is, what is your process for construction? If we look at this Lucy sculpt, what is his process of construction? That's the thing that I want you to be thinking about as we kind of do this. And I'm going to open up my cabinet with the fan, and I'm going to take a look at on YouTube. Yeah, there we go. Good. Okay, you selects. All right, great. Okay, I see that. Let's pause, throw this down. And we're also broadcasting over there on Twitch, Ryan Kingsline on Twitch. I haven't done that in a while. Okay, so what do you think is his process? What do you think is your process? Hey, John, how you doing? I really want to know this, right? Because for me, the most common thing for people who are beginning is they start with volume. Then they put form in and they push it around until it gets into place. That's the most common process, volume, and then you push form around. Okay, what do you think is missing? And if you've seen me do this talk before, don't blow it for other people. What do you think is missing? All right, and I'm monitoring a couple of different things I want to see in the different platforms. I think we're live on Facebook and YouTube. What do you think is missing? Is it anatomy? Is it form? Is it the eyes? Is it the mouth? What's wrong? What's missing here? There's one thing, and there's one thing only that's not going well. And it is the key to us creating realism. It's the key, really, and the foundation, the cornerstone of the 12 days of realism is this one conversational topic, right? So what do you guys think is missing? Let me check over here on YouTube. My body is ready. Come on, get yourselves typing. What is it that we are missing right now? All right. Eyes, jawline. Gareth has got it. The number one thing that we are missing is structure. The number one thing, let's see if I push it down in here, right? Because see, most people say anatomy, but here, before we do this, what's missing in this? Now, you guys may not know this, but this is actually my sculpt. I sculpted the demo head, and I put that inside of ZBrush. That's my baby. But when I look at that now, I look at that and I cringe a tiny bit. What's wrong with the demo head? And I remember I sculpted multiple versions of it, and this is the one Ofer liked. There's a million things I'm not a big fan of, right? What's interesting here is that there's some solid structure. But then you come in here and you look at this, you see this kind of crazy little form in here, you see this over-reliance on the structure, and really all host of problems, although we do have, you know, our little pieces in play. Well, there you go. That's mine. Gareth is like the mouth. All right. Most people say anatomy, right? Because it's sexy, it's specific, it's icing on the cake. But what is the cake, right? And here's all of the elements of, in my mind, these are the things that are missing in most amateurs' work. These drawings typify the entire conversation. Okay, this is by Sabin Howard, wonderful sculptor. But as we said, the answer is structure. This is the key. This is the thing that if you're having any problem, the problem always comes down to one thing, and it comes down to structure. Look at how clear that brow is. You get the brow here, but look at how she's also got, this is done by a female sculptor, I think. Strong superciliary arch, very clear form moving into the roundness in here, right? It's really good, solid. Here you've got this kind of like little swimmy surface of this little bump, and you're like, hey, well, there's something right there, there's something right here. But there's not a real solidness. And then you really see the lack of structure when you come in and you look at the bottom orbit of the eye. And instead what you see in this structure, in this area, right? Because the brow has some element of structure, but this is the area everybody screws up in the beginning. What separates the cheek fat from the cheek itself from the eye bags? And it's all merged in. Same thing here. Look at that. See how it's the exact same problem. Bum, bum, bum. There's no underlining part of the eye, whereas if you come in here, you can actually quite clearly see the distinctions. You can see them here in this 3/4 view as well. That's quite clear in terms of the planar characteristics, and that's what's really important. So the missing ingredient for most sculptors tends to be structure, and structure equals organization. All right, so the way that I like to play this, the way that I like to think about this, it's all part of the digital sculpting method, which you can head over to ZBrush Workshops to learn more about that and get some exercises. Take a small course, a couple hours of videos in there. Is when we sculpt, we have to think about volume. We have to think about structure and then move into form. And we've got to be able to throw some clay on the surface and then go in and structure that clay to establish your planes, your correct shapes, your correct proportions, and then go in and start to establish, you know, the individual forms of the zygomatic and start to get some of these kind of a little bit more specific characteristics, you know, of the features and all of that good stuff. Okay, volume, structure, form. That is the key component that we need to be thinking about. Now, a couple of the resources that I think are really important, Gottfried Bomis, right? So as we go through these 12 days of realism, Gottfried Bomis, Elliot Goldfinger, Paul Richer, but really the key thing for me, the thing that has helped me more than anything else is this Atlas of Anatomy, the general anatomy and musculoskeletal system. Make sure that it's not just an atlas, but it is literally the general anatomy and musculoskeletal system. That's the one that you're really going to need. That's the one that's really important, right? That's the one that, for me, that changed the whole kind of conversation. So why don't we take a look here for a second at how we kind of sculpt this. So over the next 12 days, I'm going to start to unpack, you know, the sculpting of not this one, but this one. And my goal is to help you, if we head over here into ZBrush, or let's look at it from this perspective. My goal is to help you get a sense of how you can construct this as kind of, you know, just a gift to be able to develop your abilities to see, to be able to kind of have this in your mind, but also have this and be able to kind of see through form, to be able to clearly kind of indicate, for example, let's rotate it there, this little shape and how that combines right in here, okay? How you get this little part of the zygomatic, how you pulled all that stuff out. But all of this detail, all this beautiful form that we kind of see here, This is information. And in the beginning, it's too much information. So we need to be able to start with a simple structure and a simple approach. So this is what I want you to kind of do today to help you get a sense out of this entire, out of this process, is start with just a simple process of pulling together some little shapes, or as I like to think of in the digital sculpting method, volume, okay? So right in here, I've done an enormous amount of work. I've done a lot of work in terms of volume and structure that you may or may not be aware of. But let's unpack this a little bit so that you can be kind of clear. We have created the volume of the cranium, the volume of, well, really what we've done is we've done the volume of an egg. Then we came in and we created the structure of a cranium, and we created the structure of this front plane of the face. And that's really an important distinction. I don't know if you guys caught this, but right down here when I come down to do this jaw, I always take these and I move them out. That way what I'm doing is I got this little chin, and I'm going to come out and move this out like this and start to really get that mandible, you know, and really get a clear quality of that. And then I like to pull from the center here because it adds more geometry. There's more rows of geometry right in this area. So it gives it a little bit of a more of a, it hardens that edge, so to speak. Let's switch over to matte cap gray. That's my baby. I didn't develop that. I think Ofer developed that. I am the one who said he prefers red wax, so I do apologize for that. I think that was a bit of a mistake. I think I should have said I prefer matte cap gray. All right, there we go. Now right here too, I've also done a couple of important structural elements. This is a stage that you cannot ignore, but I've established this frontal plane of the face, so we have a nice strong front plane, we have a nice strong side plane. If you're not happy with your sculpt, there's really only one thing going on. There's only one thing. It's structure. If you've reached a plateau and you don't know what else to do, there's only one thing going on. Structure. That's it. Right? Like, I can't tell you guys this enough. And you're going to hear me say it during this 12 days of realism. You're going to hear me say it all the time. Mastery is not magic. It's process. That's it. Right? It's, you know, Serena Williams is not Serena Williams without the process, without the, you know, thousands of hours that helped her develop that process. Any of the guys you're out there looking at online and you're saying, oh my God, their work is so beautiful. Look, I've been in this industry long enough where there's literally, I think there's like 6 people that were really big names before I got into this industry and started developing stuff at Pixelogic, that were big names, you know, early on. Pascal Blanchet, there's Meets Meyer, there's a couple of guys from Blizzard, Vitaly Bulgarov came up right around that time. But I was in this early enough to be able to see that nobody started a genius, okay? Nobody just came out of nothing. They all started in these early phases. You don't see the work anymore, right? And there's a good reason for that. But everybody starts at the beginning. Everybody. That's why it's the beginning. So if you're not happy with your work, there's only one thing that has to be done. What do you think it is? Do you think it's go get coffee? Do you think it's stay up longer? Do you think it's work harder? Right? Because these are the kinds of things that people think. Oh yeah, I'm going to go relax and I'll switch my brain and I'll go do this. You know, a couple years later, they go work harder. You worked your ass off for a year, still in the same place. In your mind, is it true that you can work hard on something and not make progress? I want to know. I want to know the answer to that. Let me take a look over here. Hey Rod, how you doing? Waleed. Ross, all the structure is outside. Ross was answering what was wrong with the demo head. And his answer was, all the structure is outside. Effing beautiful, dude. That is the most perfect way to describe, right, what I screwed up with on the demo head. And I can remember that I was thinking structure, and because I was thinking structure, I was like, Ofer, here's this, but this isn't the one I want to use, I want to use this one. And Ofer was like, no, I like this one. Got to use this one. I'm like, this one sucks. And he's like, nope, we're using that one. And once Ofer made up his mind, that was the end of the conversation. So I put the demo head in ZBrush. I apologize for the mistakes, but the good thing is the topology's there and all the structures on the outside, so you get to make everything beautiful. All right. Now, just a reminder, if you're just tuning in, I'm doing the 12 days of realism. Okay. That means that every day I'm going to come on live and I'm going to just kind of talk like this and share some tips and some processes. And the first thing that we're talking about here today is the idea that structure is the key to this conversation. Okay. Structure is everything. If we come back into this slide, this is the slide that I like to make sure I draw people's attention to, is that the difference between these two sculptures is only one thing. You know, the difference between the sculpture on the left side versus the sculpture on the right side is literally one thing and one thing only. And that is structure. You learn structure, you learn the magic keys to the kingdom. Yeah? Hey, Charles. Never stop working, live what you are doing. Live art, Charles says. Rod, I'm on my way home from work, but I can assure you I'll definitely watch this again from the start. Absolutely. Gareth, active study, right? So there's some great books out there that I recommend to people, Talent Code, things like that. But ultimately, what it all boils down to is this little section in the beginning of Talent Code. This is what I was telling one of my students, Rashid, the other day. Deep practice. It's not my word, somebody else's word. Deep practice. That's the key to this conversation. So when you are doing this, what happens with a lot of people, and I'll do this, and myself included, and I'll clone that. So I got a little base. Let me go back. I don't want to lose that work. They'll come in and they'll just go like this, and this is my brush, the RK Stylus. You can head over to ZBrush Workshops if you want to pick that up. I got a couple of brushes over there. What's my embed? Oh, my embed's at 5. Okay, we're gonna come in and I love to give you this camera view. It's so cool. You can come in and be like, yeah, and let's just go in here and use a standard brush and let's divide it a couple of times. And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna try to create an eye, and let's see if I can get that eye in there. And at this stage, what people who are beginning don't realize is that this is performance at Wimbledon. This is somebody performing at the highest level. Because this is freaking hard. There's no structure. I'm keeping everything in my mind. I have no idea how far this form is. This topology is going to work against me. I'm holding everything in my mind. Right up here in my noggin. I'm not putting it down in here, and that makes it so much harder. Because remember, mastery is not magic, it's process. So the most important thing for you to do as somebody who wants to master this is you must slow yourself down. This should be the first 20 minutes just to get to this. And you want to work so that as you increase the subdivision levels, you actually don't need to change anything. It's all good. It's all the same. So I should be able to walk in and let me find my halfway point. I always find the halfway point at the sides. There you go. And I always, when I do faces, I always pull down. Because what I'm doing here is I'm establishing this front plane of the face. Okay. Now I got another way that I kind of approach this. This is actually my old school way. This is the way I used to do it. And it doesn't produce as reliable of results because right in here, you ever had problems with the side of the nose? Has that ever been a painful thing for you to sculpt? Well, It's because this is the area that people screw up. And they screwed up by not thinking about it and not accounting for it. So that's what we've got to deal with here. See you, Ross. Eyelid, what's the right way to know structure and then move to details? Well, I'll show you a little bit here. You know, and some of this is covered in the digital sculpting method. But if you go in and you start with the absolute basics, like let's do that. This is one of the most fundamental structural constructs of the human face. This kind of Pac-Man thing, right? How can this be one of the most fundamental structures to the human face? Take a look. You see it in comparison, I think. Look at the red line and the red line. Look at the yellow line and the yellow line. Yellow line, yellow line. Red line, red line. Do the red line right there. Eye, corner of the other eye to this corner of the eye. There you go. Chin, chin. That's the fundamental structure of the face. Yes, this moves out here, and so that's the next thing that we do. I'll come in, and let's Control N, clear out of that. And what I like to do right off the bat is kind of just build a little platform. Okay, a little bit of depth. That's too much depth. Move slow, right? I love writing. Any email where I get to write and say the words "small moves, Ellie" is like, that's my favorite email. I watch Contact way too many times. I put it on in the background when I sculpt every now and then. It's a good reminder that the scientific mind is one thing and then there's just something else going on. Don't know what the heck that is. Okay, look at this. Look at how much time I'm spending making this nice. And you're probably looking at this going like, what the bejesus is this? Well, this, my friend, is everything. Literally everything. The entire world of sculpting and realism and all of that is this. You can't build a house without having the foundations. Then you don't have a house, you have a death trap. Hey, Alvaro. Awesome, my friend. Then, what's the next form that we see, right? Like if we bring this, not the demo head thing. God, I can't stand looking at that. If we bring this guy over here, what's the next form that we need to sculpt? What's the next thing that really calls our attention? Probably the nose, right? So how are you going to do the nose? Do you come in here and you just be like, ah, yeah, I'm going to make it happen, smooth it and go like that? I mean, you're asking for trouble. Process. Mastery is not magic, it's process. Use the right process, get better results. Okay, let's come in here and use rotate. And, you know, let's just go into the gizmo. Well, you know, don't matter. I'm going to move that out. I'll zoom that in. I'll just do this by proxy because none of this matters. There you go. That's pretty okay. And then scale it in. Okay, look at that. Got all the structure I need. I need to tweak this. I need to smooth that out a little bit, but that I can handle. Got to be careful of that nose, so why don't I divide this? But now if we're comparing these, not doing too shabby. Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of an issue later on in terms of where the corner of that is and where the corner of that eye is. So it's gonna have I'm gonna have a little issue in there that I got to deal with because I pushed this part a little too far up. And that's all the stuff that I need to understand. Now, another form and one that people often miss. It's this one right here. Because we need to get the nostril and the nose. We need something halfway, and that usually has to do with this volume of the upper lip that gets forgotten quite a bit. I'll move it that way so you guys can see that a little clearer. Let me check in with you guys and see how you're doing and making sure that you guys are kind of clear on all of this. Let me check YouTube. Yeah. Doctor, form is sort of like structure. Form for me is curvature. Structure is has a more planar characteristics. Get the process right. Practice is like, yes. Okay, cool. All right, so when I think of this, I come in, when I'm working on this, the next thing I do to get a proper, beautifully done head, because again, this is the 12 days of realism, I build a little bit of a column right there. And then I build the form out. That then becomes the muzzle of the mouth. Okay, and I'll separate the bottom part. Like that. There's a bunch of stuff. And then let's move this out a little bit. Move that down, and I'm going to start to add some shape to this. There you go. Now, watch how simple it is to make a mouth when you have the proper structure. I'm going to try to show it to you in like as few strokes as possible, because that's when you know you understand it. So I'm going to do a real small line. And just say that's the boundaries. And I'm going to do a bigger line, and I'm going to say that's the planes. There we go. I had to do a little bit of back and forth on it. What do I have here? I have up, down, down, and up. I got to work this a little bit, because the topology was going a little bit wonky on me. Coming in, but I just come in and smooth that out, come in and smooth that out, and what do I get? But the beginning of some nice, beautiful lips. Okay, I've already gone in and done a couple of key kind of elements. I've done the marionette line to some extent. Let's just go in and kind of pull. I like to pull a line straight down like that. There you go. There you go. And then now might be a wise time for me to change my topology. There we go. I'm going to turn Dynamesh off. I don't like to work with it. I know plenty of artists that do. I don't generally work with it a ton. I just need it for, you know, the geometry in that nose. So if we're going to finish out that those lips, now it comes down to just being a little clear about the form, okay? And this is one of the key things for us to understand, is that at this point we did volume of it. Now then we did the structure, down plane, up plane, and we fit that up together. But now that we've got those together, we're rounding form. You see me starting to round things and starting to create a little bit more form, what I would consider form. And this is another part of it. Form, a lot of edging has a lot to do with form. Let me reset all my brushes, because I've been playing with these things for a couple days. I'm going to put a little hole right in there. And then just, I like to occasionally just use this Damien Standard brush to just put an edge in, and then you can kind of push it back a little bit. There you go. Okay, good. Simple lips, right? That's the way in which this was done on the side over here. Exact same process, just little bit by little bit. Now, if I want to make this nose a little better, somebody might come in and say, oh, well, let's put the nostril hole in there, but that's a mistake because what you've got is volume, what you don't have is structure, and you don't want to jump into form. Form is the small little details like the nostril, okay? What we want is structure. So what does that mean? That means, number one, that you need to, if I can get this, the correct thing clicked, come on. You need to separate out the nostril from the bulb of the nose there. You need to put a line in there because that's what structure is. Structure, if you look it up in the dictionary, is a relationship between parts. In order for you to have structure, you have to have parts. In order for you to have parts, you've got to have contiguous, simplified shapes. And that's what structure is all about, is getting in and saying, okay, that's nostril, that's bulb of the nose. That's what we're working on here, right? So if I'm going to put the structure in the nose, it doesn't have to do with that hole. At least that's, to me, not the most effective approach to it. What it has to do with, and hopefully you'll agree, it has to do with separating that nostril and just creating that one tiny little plane that I just did. And from a distance, that nose will read. Now, this guy's a little stuck up, so let's give him the bulb of his nose, let's get it some life. And I'm going to smooth that out a little bit. And just go for depth, always checking depth and making sure I'm not screwing that up. Pulling this out a little bit, pull these guys in. All right. So you see the form starting to come, right? But through this careful process. That's the key component in there. Hey, Ivan. Love the fundamental structure class. Glad, my friend, because today, depending on when you're coming in here, I'm working on the 12 days of realism. And my goal is to help get you guys a little bit closer to your dream, or my dream, really. It's my dream, it doesn't need to be yours. But of realism, of creating something. I like games. Games is my big thing. I'm founder of Game Art Institute. And for me, art needs to be my vision of the future of 3D art is real time. So that's the thing that I'm kind of focused on, not necessarily V-Ray or Arnold or some of this other stuff, which is cool and powerful. I just, still images don't do anything for me. And I want to help you guys all get to the point where you're starting to do that. So over the next 12 days, I'm going to come online and help you get there. But as I said, the key to realism is structure, right? Again, I can't emphasize this enough. The difference between the sculpt on the left, the sculpt on the right, is this person was an amateur, just like I was kind of an amateur sculptor when I created the demo head, I got the same kind of mistakes going on in it as well. This guy right in here, this is my sculpt. I did this about 10, 12 years ago. I got the same things going on, the same problems. Okay, I don't have an understanding of how volume works with structure with form. Again, this has been in your ZBrush from go. Like I put this in ZBrush 3, and you probably didn't even know I did it, but it's mine. And I don't like to own it too often, but it's important if I'm going to go over there and talk about other people's work. I show you guys where mine sucks as well. Okay, and I've gone from that to this in the 12 days of realism. Over the next 11 days at this point, I want to help you get there yourself. Okay, so now if we come in, the next thing that really throws people is the eyes. That's the next element that we got to talk about today. Hey Ashley, how you doing, my friend? Everybody, guys, man, you can head over to ashleysparling.com. His hair class is over right now, but he's got some great stuff over there. All right, I'm checking YouTube. Yeah, there we go. All right, guys, leave me a note over there if you need me, but let's get ourselves into the eye. Because the big problem with the eye, and I always get nervous when I do this because, I could screw it up. But the big problem with the eye all comes down to structure. I could come in and be like, all right, there's my eye, or, you know, but I'm going to do this in a very specific way, and then I'm going to help you see what it is I actually did. Okay, because there's going to be something I do, there's going to be a couple of things I try like the devil to not do. And I'm going to definitely look at this from a 3/4 view. And structurally speaking, I've already done some very important things. Structurally speaking, actually, I've done some very significant things. I don't know if it's all going to turn out, but I've done some significant things. One of them is where I embedded the eye. Notice the slant, right? So if we're looking at this, and I'll show it to you here, it's easy, let's rotate, there we go. It's easy to miss that. Very easy to miss that. Let's take a look at one of the life casts I got over here. Let's take a look at Jeremy Irons. Do you see that slope? The other thing you need to understand is, where does the eye in relationship to the top versus the bottom? And do you see how the eye is further up? It's closer to the top. Like, that's the top of the brow. That's what they call the supraorbital margin. Right there, supraorbital margin. Down here, infraorbital margin. Look at the difference. The bulk of it is right there. That's actually right where his iris is. And I can see it here because I can see through that skin. But the iris is like right there, and it's closer to the top than it is down here, and it's slanted. And the reason why is because it is embedded up for protection purposes, right? We're trying to protect it to keep it nice and clean and beautiful. And oh, totally forgot to hit record on this. All right, well, there we go. That's what I get. Now, once we've done this, there's a couple of other things that are really important for you to be mindful of in this process. Those 4 points are literally everything. Those 4 points are so crazy important, and if you don't put them in, you're going to screw this up. And that's the kind of stuff that when you learn that, it makes such a massive difference in your capacity to create. This actually eventually becomes the nasal juggle groove, and this over here, believe it or not, is actually just the side of the eye. It's this kind of portion right here. If we come over to this screen, it's that, right? Because look, the palpebral ligament attaches to the inside here, and hey, what do you know? You can't really see it too well, but there is absolute depth right there that you must account for as you are doing this process. So you have to leave room right there. Now, the next thing that I got to do, if that ever finishes, there we go. Let's come in here and start to sculpt eyelids. And I like to I'm going to work towards the upper part and then come down. Make sure you keep a nice slant. You know, that's a little bit much, but I don't get too caught up in those details. So that's all stuff that you can fix later with the move brush. Spend your time and get your structure, and don't pull it off over the edge. Keep your structure intact. Okay, I'll exaggerate that for a moment. And then I'm going to push that back a little bit, because this is the part of the eyeball or eyelid that really holds to the surface of the eyeball. Okay, and look, I screwed it up. What an idiot. Oh, what do you know? Wasn't so hard to fix. Not such an idiot after all. Okay, how's my audio? I feel like my mic is going to actually go out here pretty soon. Looks like the audio is okay. We're still doing good. Okay, and then I'll come in and I'll do this lower eyelid. Slowly. pull that across a little bit. And then when I come in here, I'm not going to just kind of go over the top. I don't like to have these eyelids meet. Some people do that. But I like to have structure. So the upper eyelid is almost always dominant over the lower eyelid. So this is dominant and this one goes inside. Same with the upper lip and the lower lip. Upper lip goes over the top, lower lip goes to the inside. You know, those little things, when you get those kind of done correctly, make a big difference. Okay, then we got to come in and start to pull away and start to get that lower eyelid, the portion of it that's going to hug or conform to the eyeball itself. And there you go. Let's go Damien's standard brush. And I'll pull that in a little bit. Cool. Okay, then I'll go back to this and just sometimes, you know what, let me use there we go. That's a little cleaner. And then I've got to sculpt the lower part of that eyelid. Actually, this is one of the things I really like to do. Let me undo this, because I like to make sure I proceed in as structural a way as possible, right? So one of the things I really like to do is, structure is the relationship between parts. So what's the part I'm missing here? I'm missing the eyeball. So I like to come in and I like to get this corners, both corners kind of established. So I tuck them in like that. So I've got the upper eyelid, and we can probably divide this. Let's go, yeah, there we go. We've got the upper eyelid, we've got the lower eyelid, and now we've got the eyeball. Coming over here to this one as well, we do the exact same thing. Okay, tuck it in. And if you tuck it in, it's gonna be cleaner and better. But here I'm establishing structure. I'm establishing parts, right? So essential that you get in and you establish these parts. And let's come in there and get a nice clean ball in there. Notice I do a little bit of a straight and then I come down, and then I'll pull that up, and I'm gonna dive that right in to that point. This one I'm just gonna kind of go a little bit like that. Voila. Cool. All right. Eyeballs, my friend. It's not terribly hard. Hey Gary, how you doing? Hey Victor, how you doing? People start with a sphere where they are sculpting the eye. Is it wrong way? No, not at all. I don't think it's the wrong way at all. You know, they do that when they're sculpting in clay as well. Nermit, of course, my friend. I love sharing my knowledge. I just, you know, this is what I do, guys. I made a decision long time ago that it wasn't about me. My goal is to spread, you know, skill, technique, knowledge, all of that stuff. And you know, early on in my entrepreneurial part, I've kind of backed away from all of that stuff now. But in the more entrepreneurial days with UArtsy and things like that, you know, my whole focus was getting artists in and getting their knowledge and sharing their knowledge with the world. I don't really care to do that stuff these days. Now I like to share it more with you direct myself. Okay, let's smooth some things out. There we go. All right, and I'm about 5 minutes away. It is actually my 10-year anniversary with my wife. I got married to my wife after knowing her for a month. I knew her literally for a month and got married. No one from my work at the time came to the wedding because they were all just like, Ryan, you're crazy. You're insane. And 10 years later, 2 beautiful kids, still going. All right, looks like my thing died. So we are pretty close to getting our butts out of here. And I think this is a good place for us to start or stop, and maybe for us to pick up next week. Because the elements that are important for me here is that you understand, number one, what structure is. And structure is a relationship between parts. And in order for you to have parts, you must have clarity of simplified areas, okay? That's kind of the key thing that we've kind of established here. And we've got a lot of work to do on that nose to bring that out. And some of that I'll go in, and we got the brow to do, and you can do the two different parts of the brow. You can do these multiple parts of the nose. Lots of stuff going on in there. But if we're going to get in here, oh yeah, and look at this. Totally missing that, okay? So the last thing I might do is come in and just sculpt a little bit of a cheek. And when I sculpt the cheek, I go all the way. You got to go all the way to the inside, not just the corner. And then take it all the way up over the ear. Really important that you take it over the ear. All right, guys, that concludes day one of 12 Days of Realism. All right, my goal over these next 12 days is help you get to where we are together, understanding how this works, right? All the way down to talking about the specularity and some of the most significant elements to really just create some drama, realism, you know, all of the little bells and whistles and the details, and what details are important and what details are not important. That's going to be a really important factor for us, right? But it's little things like understanding the stubble and the peach fuzz. You can kind of see the peach fuzz if we zoom in. You see a little bit of it right in here. Let's switch over to this screen. You see these little tendrils. Oh, I love that stuff. Da, 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 da. You see a little peach fuzz all over the place. There's so many things that help make that happen. Let me open this up here real quick for a couple of questions, see if you guys got anything, see if there's anything I can do. I'm gonna check out my the stream over here on Facebook and see if I can do anything. Looks like I am live. I want to thank you guys for being here. I'm going to do my best every day to give you some value and help you understand, you know, this journey, because realism to me is the key. It's been the key from the beginning, but I've been just focused on software and jobs and things like that. But it's really the whole purpose of realism, kind of codifies it. It galvanizes the entire journey here, for me anyways. Hey Gareth, thank you. John, thank you. Gary, thank you. I'm assuming, I just looked at this, I'm assuming that's the 10 years. Ivan, since I found your YouTube videos in anatomy, you've been a source of inspiration and a good guide. Thank you, my friend, that's my goal. And I haven't really actually been doing a ton lately, Ivan, you know, because I've been really focused on like how you grow artists. So I'm looking forward to, now that I understand the growth of an artist a little better, I'm really looking forward to that and getting more into there. Hey, Austin, hey, Waleed. Thank you, John. All right, and thanks, Gary. All right, let me check out, let's put ourselves over here, and let me check, see if there was anything that I could do on YouTube. Okay, doctor, at this point would be good just to make a ton of sculpts up to this point and practice your initial structure. Yes, man, doctor, if you could do 10 of these, if you could just do 10 like this and you focus on getting them structured like this, that's the key. It's like, you know, people when they learn violin, they don't start with some Chopin piece or some Beethoven piece or the Clair de Lune or some damn thing like that, right? You start with this because this is structure, this is simple. Chris, you're welcome. Dr. Mint, thank you also for the tutorial. You've made those ZBrush Anatomy ones where you constructed the skeleton. Oh yeah, those are super old. I'm super looking forward to redoing those, Doctor. Really looking forward to doing those, actually. You know, Scott Eaton did such great stuff. I saw no reason to go out there and produce anything for anybody. You know, it was just like, I think enough anatomy had been put out there. But I think nowadays, the thing that people are missing most is not the detailed information, just how you pull it all together. So I will be putting some anatomy together from the lessons that I've learned from what my artists need over the last, you know, series of time here over at Game Art Institute. There's a lot of cool stuff I want to share. So thanks, Doctor, for that. I appreciate that. All right, I tell you what, here's what I want you guys to do. Sculpt that head. And then if you want to learn more about what we do, didn't know where this screen or what it was doing, head over to GameArtInstitute.com. There's a couple of things that I think are really valuable for you. If you head over into the courses page, whenever this thing decides to load, you can apply, you can schedule an interview for the boot camps in here. I would love to see you in the character or the environment one in January. This is actually going to be the first of a year-long program, but you can get in and just do it term by term. Okay, there's also a couple of other things that I think are really important. You can get in here and learn about the substance designer and the painter class. And if you want to learn more from me, you know, head over there and you can take this substance class, or you can come over to Sculpting the Face. This is open now, and we're going to start this again in January. All right? A lot of good stuff in here if you want to learn more from me. But you head over to GameArtInstitute.com, and that'll take you in there. Also, don't forget, Matthias is doing a designing vehicles and complex assets. This is it's like $29. You know, I mean, seriously, $29. This is not a lot. Paul Widelski, Mother of God. I have, you know, if this is not full soon, I'm simply going to quit training you. Look at this guy's work. And it's $29 to sit in a class, right? And I personally would charge nothing, but it's not my time. So, you know, that's split 50-50 with Paul. And so he gets that, and you guys need to be learning from this individual. Okay, James Raitosa, I would not miss that. Eyelid, Samantha Rogers, Creature Art for Production. Oh, man. Venetius, doing tree bark and substance designer. Come on. Okay, there's a bunch of on-demands in there as well. So make sure you guys head over to Game Art Institute. You can see what we're up to in there. But the key thing, the most important thing, is sculpt every day, right? Every day, make a difference in your life by stepping up to make, you know, put that mileage in. And when you're not able to go further and you don't know what you need to do next, remember what I'm telling you now. It all comes down to structure. You're just at the edge and the end of your knowledge of structure. Go back to the books. What's the structure of here? Find as many words as you can in this area, right? If you can do that, this is gonna be child's play for you. All right, have an awesome week, and I'll put you over here at this one so you guys can see this. That way I can close all of these streams. All right, ciao.